Beyond the Wrench with Jay Goninen from WrenchWay.
Welcome to Beyond the Wrench. My name is Jay Goninen, and I am your host. In this week's episode, we've got a really cool one because we get to bring on Sara Kerwin, who is our Director of Marketing here at WrenchWay. And she's really a great, really smart person when it comes to marketing. And that's what we talk about in this week's episode. We talk about recruitment marketing and what we have to change as businesses to make sure that we're standing out to the people that we're trying to attract. And so over the course of the episode, we go into pretty great detail around recruitment marketing and why there's so many parallels between recruiting and marketing. So a really excellent episode for all of you to listen to, and one that I think you'll really enjoy. Now, before we get into the podcast itself, I did want to announce the winner of our higher or lower game for last week, and that was Tyler Mefford with a high score of 40. With that, Tyler wins a $100 Amazon gift card, and that gift card is sponsored by FullBay. FullBay is an industry-leading software solution for heavy-duty repair shops, and with this cloud-based app, it's loaded with features that will let you leave the shop for a long overdue vacation. The folks over at FullBay are top-quality individuals, really good people, and I'd encourage you to go check out not only their software, but a lot of the content that they put out at fullbay.com. Lots of really, really good stuff out there. Unfortunately, Tyler did not turn over the Queen of Hearts, so that pot rises yet again to $2,900. We're getting awfully close to $3,000 that we're going to give away. And if you want a shot at that money, make sure you go out to the WrenchWay app and answer the challenges, play the games, try to win the prize just like Tyler Mefford did for your crack at turning over the Queen of Hearts. Being up to $2,900, the cards are getting less and less that you can turn over. It's getting likely that somebody's going to turn that over soon. So if you want a shot at it, go out to the WrenchWay app and play the games to really try to put your hat in the ring to win that money. Speaking of WrenchWay and the app, one of the things we do at WrenchWay is help technicians find great places to work. If you think your shop is a top shop, we want to hear from you. WrenchWay Top Shops pages are like resumes for shops. They share all the details technicians want to know before they apply, such as compensation ranges for all levels, photos and videos of the service area, videos of technicians and managers, and really giving that technician that's looking for a job an idea of who they'd be working for and who they'd be working with. That and many, many more things, right? We talk about facts on work environment, career development, and hiring process, and just so much information to give the technician the ability to do their due diligence on your shop. If you want to attract more technicians to your shop by becoming a WrenchWay Top Shop, visit wrenchway.com to contact us and learn more. We'll also include a link in the show notes below. I hope you enjoy this week's episode, and we'll talk to you next week. On this week's episode of Beyond the Wrench, I have the pleasure of being joined by our Director of Marketing, Sara Kerwin. How are you today, Sara?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jay?
I am fantastic. This has been a long time in the works. Sara is really the mastermind behind all of the marketing that a lot of you see out there, whether it's through social media or general branding, just a lot of different hats that you wear here at WrenchWay. And I'm excited to get you on because I think you bring a unique perspective when it comes to marketing and how it relates to recruiting. And that's what we're going to dive into. But we're going to start off like we do with every other guest. And we're going to talk about your background and how you got here today. So let's start off. You're obviously the Director of Marketing. And let's start off with, what does that mean? What all do you do here at WrenchWay?
A little bit of everything. So I've been with the WrenchWay Find a Wrench team for about 3 years now. And prior to that, I know, Jay, you were kind of running the marketing as much as you could and worked with a little bit with an outside agency, but really coming on, it was kind of building it from the ground up. It had a good foundation started with what you had built and with what the agency had built, but really it was kind of just building it from the ground up. So it's a little bit of everything. I'm fortunate enough that we have such a great marketing team, sales team. Everyone works together really well so that makes my job a little bit easier. But I mean, we do everything to get out there. We invest a lot in our website. We do social media, webinars, trade shows, just anything we can kind of do to get out there and get our message out there to tech schools and shops.
Yeah, I think I've got a greater appreciation for that director of marketing role than about anybody, because trying to handle it on my own prior to all of us getting together was really challenging. I mean, to try and stay, and just not from the standpoint of even the physical work, it's the staying on top of everything and how much stuff changes every day. It's just a constant circle of different stuff that's changing, and it's hard to keep up with.
Absolutely. Like you said, the hardest part is, coming up with your message and the campaigns and stuff is step one, but the continuously getting out there and, it's always promoting your product and service. You don't stop at any point. You always are continuing to get it out there. So it's being consistent with what you're doing for sure.
So your background has been marketing forever, right? You've been involved with marketing from college on.
Yes, correct. So I grew up in Wausau, Wisconsin, which is right in central Wisconsin.
Shout out Wausau.
Shout out Wausau. Love it. And, I was never one of those kids who knew what they wanted to do when they grew up. I was always jealous of those kids who oh, I want to be a dentist. And I was always I don't know what. But I was always really good at writing in particular. I always took the higher level classes. I always enjoyed it. And I think a big reason that was because I was really shy. I was super, super shy. I had a lot of anxiety. And I liked with writing that you kind of got to take your time and formulate your thoughts and do the research and kind of get it on paper how you wanted it to get the message across. So it's something that I always really enjoyed. And I didn't actually go to college for marketing. I almost did, but I ended up taking the communication science and rhetoric route. And the reason I did that is, so I went to UW-Madison, and marketing was in the business school and communications was in the letters and science school. The big difference there, I knew you had to take calculus to be in the business school and to do marketing, and that just didn't seem like something that was for me. So I went.
You wouldn't use calculus in marketing?
No, you know what? And I think I'm doing just fine without it. For the record.
I think you are.
Yeah, so I got my degree in communications, and then I've been working in marketing ever since I graduated college in 2009, which was a great time to find a job, let me tell you. But yeah, I've worked for companies of all sizes. I've worked for the state. I've worked for a radio station. I've worked for big companies, small companies, medium-sized companies, and I love it.
Yeah, and it really what brought you to us was a merger. When my business partner, Mark Wilson, and I came together, you were on Mark's team, and we brought everybody together. And that was such an interesting dynamic because I don't think any of us knew how all the personalities would play together and how, the businesses would fit together. But we knew that we had some really talented people on both sides of the fence. And I feel like it integrated fairly seamlessly. It seemed like everything really worked out well.
Absolutely. I think, everyone was a little unsure. Like you said, we didn't know when two companies merge together, you don't really know exactly how it's going to go and if the people are going to get along. And it's funny because now a couple of years later, I mean, my best friends work at WrenchWay or have worked at WrenchWay before, I'm very close with our director of sales, Kate, and our director of account management, Matt. And, there's past salespeople and stuff you guys are my family now. So yeah. It really did integrate very well.
It is weird how all that comes together. It just everything came together. But I think the cool part was that the team that you had in joining us just dove right in with the automotive space, with the diesel space, with the heavy duty space, and just maybe you didn't know as much about it when you came in, but you all dove headfirst into it and really embraced it. And it was such a gratifying thing from my end to see that all of you took it so seriously when you came in. You wanted to learn the industry. You wanted to just kind of ingrain yourself in this business. And, that's not just speaking for you, but for the entire team. Everybody's done such a good job with that.
Definitely. And that was my introduction to this industry was working for Find a Wrench. I didn't know anything prior to that. I used to joke with people prior to this job that I don't know anything about cars. I know that some have 2 doors and some have 4. Like that was like a joke I would say. Like, but yeah, we dove head first, and I think in order to be a good marketer, you need to dive into the industry. You need to live it, breathe it, read the articles, watch the webinars, and just throw yourself into it and talk to the people in order to get to know it. I know in those early days of blogging for Find a Wrench, I would write something. I'd be like, Jay, does this make sense? Like, how do you even word this? Like, is this the right word you'd use? You know, and that's what you need to do in order to learn the industry.
Yeah. And I think as you guys came on, we started to learn that recruiting was changing under our feet, right? It was really, I think even with what we had done at Find a Wrench, it was really posting on job boards and doing it the traditional way. What we learned was that we had to take a little bit of a different approach to it. And the reason was because it was changing under our feet, right? And shops really needed to do a better job at telling their stories and really putting out there who they are, because there's just so many opportunities for technicians that are out there. And that really brings us and segues nicely into our topic of conversation today, which is talking about what role marketing plays in recruiting. And as you've ingrained yourself into this business, you've seen it firsthand. And I think the first question I would start with then is, why do shops need to start thinking about recruiting differently?
I mean, the easy answer is, well, how's recruiting going for you now, right? Like, if you're doing what you've been doing for 5-10 years, how's that going? Because the shops I talk to, and the reason they're talking to us is because it's not going as well as it used to go. And there's a few reasons for that. And it's no secret, the technician shortage is bad and it's getting worse. We're seeing less young people enter the industry. The techs that are entering the industry, I think there's some stat out there like 41 or 42% are leaving after the first 2 years. So something's going wrong in those first couple of years that is turning them off from the industry and not keeping them working in there. And that's already like, there's not a lot of people entering, that we're losing a lot. So we need to do something to keep the techs that we do have and attract more. But also, the average age of technicians is up in the 40s now. So more and more techs are retiring and leaving the industry. So I think that's the first important thing, and why traditional recruiting methods, in order to understand why they aren't working, is to understand that first part.
Yeah.
The second part is, because this talent pool is shrinking so much, even the best recruiters in the world are struggling to get the techs. So, I mean, it's just, we need to do something different. And if you look at, or if you think about like traditional recruiting methods, you often think about like job boards and posting ads on job boards. Well, the problem now is job boards are inundated with open tech positions because everyone needs them. So if you search in Chicago or really wherever, automotive technician, diesel technician, whatever, on a job board, it's bringing up hundreds of posts. Well, as a job seeker, which it already sucks looking for a job, no one likes it, it's not fun. If you bring up hundreds of posts and you look at them, there's like no way to tell the difference of which one is the right one to apply to. It's overwhelming. So they kind of freeze and they don't know what to do, and they don't know the best shops to apply for. And then I think something else that's important to remember is, even when we're talking about job boards, the people who are seeing those job ads are active job seekers. The majority of technicians that are out there today are already employed. There are some that are actively looking for new positions and finding something that's a better fit for them, but the majority of them are okay where they're at, but they're also open to new opportunities should something kind of land in their lap. Well, we need to think about recruiting differently. In order to attract those people, we need to land in those technicians' lap. Your shop needs to get in front of those technicians so that they can start to see, hey, maybe there are better opportunities out there for me. But if you're just throwing out messages like, we're hiring, we need technicians, that's not going to catch their attention. But if they see, hey, wow, look at that cool equipment that shop has, or look at how much fun those technicians have, like joking around at work and stuff, maybe that's a good place for me. I can picture myself there. So I think it's just, we need to think about recruiting differently. And the hard part is that thinking about attracting those, what we call passive job seekers, the ones that are open to new opportunities, it's more work. There's no getting around it. It's harder than, posting a job ad, but posting job ads isn't working. So we need to put in the work to do it.
No, and we say it a lot internally, but there is no silver bullet to recruiting. And I think where you come into play is the similarities that recruiting and marketing have, right? And as you've really learned that recruiting side, and then now the marketing, you've obviously always known the marketing side, but what similarities are there between the two?
Yeah, that's a good question. And something that prior to working for Find a Wrench and WrenchWay that I didn't really see the parallels, but now that I've been in it for a while, like I can see it. So for example, like in marketing, you have a product or service. In recruiting, you have a job. So these are the things you need to get out there in front of people. For both, you have a target market that you're trying to get that product, service, job in front of. In marketing, we have what we call like hot leads. So these are the people who are ready to buy your product and service, and we want all those. We want, those are the easiest ones to close, the easiest ones to sell to, but there's a small pool of those. In recruiting, those are our active job seekers. Those are the people who are looking at the job ads. We wish we could get more of those, but they're limited. So in marketing, what we do, and especially on the B2B side that I'm used to working in, we focus a lot on what we call warm leads. So these are leads who might know there's a problem, but they are, maybe they're not ready to buy. Maybe they haven't decided on a solution yet, but they're open to something new, but they need to take some convincing that it's the right step for them and it's the right time. Well, in recruiting, this is what we'd consider the passive job seekers. So those people, you need to take them on a few dates first before they're going to marry you. You know what I mean? Like you need to be in front of them, show them different messaging, try to relate to them, and then they might be ready to buy in the future, or those job seekers might be ready to make a move in the future once they just have a little bit more information and decide like it's a good time for them to make that move. And most importantly, and we kind of alluded to this earlier, is all of this is just a continual process. Marketing doesn't post one ad, send one email. It's a continuous cycle of emailing, posting on social media, creating new content, trying different messages and seeing what works. Recruiting can't just be putting out one social post for looking for texts, or, it's just an ongoing process and continually getting in front of job seekers.
Well, I feel like that's something we practice internally too, right? Like it's not something we just preach and don't actually do. When it comes to our marketing efforts, I give the example of TikTok, maybe something that I wasn't overly familiar with, didn't really have a desire to be familiar with, but there were a lot of technicians out there, and our marketing team did a fantastic job doing research on TikTok, and the really how we land with technicians on that platform is really impressive. And it's not just that we're just relying on TikTok now, but it's a really cool element to what we do. And I think that was so impressive from our marketing team standpoint to really keep pushing the boundaries of maybe even traditional marketing, and it's helped our brand out a lot.
Absolutely. And I am one of those people, like, I am not going to jump on the latest marketing trend. Like, I like to let it sink in, see what some other companies are doing. And I'm probably more hesitant than anyone. And shout out to Val on our team. She did some research. She gave a presentation to us and convinced us that, yeah, we need to try this and let's see what happens. And like Mark, our co-founder and CEO, always says, like, the first step is the hardest. You just got to get out there and do it and try it and accept that it's not going to be perfect, but you're going to perfect it over time and it's going to get better. But I think it's impressive that our marketing team is out there on TikTok too, because some of the biggest marketing companies or like marketing solutions out there who are, on top of marketing, on top of the trends, they have their account on TikTok. There's no videos yet. They're still waiting in the sidelines to be like, okay, how do we do this? And like, I think they're overthinking it now. I'm like, no, get out there, do it.
Well, and I think it's really important to have the right player on that aspect of the business, right? So if you don't have somebody that's as comfortable being on camera as Val is, it makes it a lot more challenging to put those videos out. And somewhere where I'm definitely not comfortable going in front of a camera and dancing or doing anything like that, she embraces it, and she's just really good at it. And we say the same thing when it comes to the execution of a plan in terms of a shop, that finding that right player in the shop is so important to kind of drive progress. And one of our rules on the WrenchWay side is we don't allow the service manager to be the one in charge of that, because they're putting out fires. They're not, they're not able from a time standpoint to really be able to embrace it and do the things. And I think, when we look at it from our own internal marketing team, I think the same thing plays there as well.
Absolutely. If I would have been put in charge of launching this TikTok thing, it would have failed. There's just, I pulled in too many different directions that it could have been successful. But you need someone who's not only willing to own it, but you need someone like who's not afraid to try it too. Like Val wasn't, she wasn't excited to get in front of the camera at first. I'm sure she wasn't, but she just did it. She's a little uncomfortable, and now you can see like she's more comfortable with it, and you just have to do it. That's the hardest part. Just get out there and do the first one.
Yeah. So let's talk about some things that shops can actively implement in a marketing plan as it relates to recruiting. And one of the things that I say a lot is, so many shops and dealerships really market to the end user. They're trying to get more business in the door. Yet when we talk to the other side of the business, where they're saying, okay, yeah, we've got all the business we can handle. We can't take any more customers in. And so my thought all the time is, I think you're marketing to the wrong people. Like you should be marketing to technicians. So when we take that and we take a deep dive into it, what are maybe some tips that you would give to a shop that really wants to dive into this and do a better job at it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, of course, it's important to bring more customers into your shop, and that should be your marketing focus. But like you said, like the technicians, I mean, without the technicians, you can't take care of the customer. So you've got to incorporate that into your marketing recruiting strategy, obviously. But I mean, first and foremost, you got to start with the basics here, and don't be a shitty shop. Like, nobody wants to work for a crappy place the best marketing recruiting in the world is not going to sell a crappy product. So no. You can have the best recruiting strategy, attract all the techs, but if you're a crappy shop, they're going to want to work there. Right. I've heard you talk about this up and down. You could probably, give some insights to that.
Yeah, I think it's not only being that, right? Like, I think we've worked with a number of thousands of shops across the U.S. at this point, and if not tens of thousands of shops. And you can tell a glaring difference between the really good ones and maybe the not so good ones. And I think one of the best pieces of advice I could give a shop is to be realistic of where you fall on that spectrum. If you think you're a really good shop, but then you take a deep dive and look at your shop truly, and you're looking at, everything from that work environment. Is it a good place to work at? Are the people nice? I think the one of our rules internally at WrenchWay is the no asshole rule. And I think that's really important, that you just, if you have a bunch of people working together that hate each other, that's not going to work very well. That, we talk about culture all the time, and that's exactly what we're talking about is, if they're not all rowing in the same direction, meaning the team, you're going to have a lot of difficulties trying to get the needle to move. And then you're going to have trouble bringing in new people on top of that. And so not only not being a shitty shop to start with, but then also not representing something other than who you are. And I think that's something that in my discussions with technicians is heartbreaking, because they'll sign up to go work for a shop. The shop promises them the world. They get there and it's not anything like they were sold, right? It was not, this nice environment like they were sold. Maybe the pay wasn't exactly aligned with what they were told. And I never get that from a shop standpoint, because if you pull somebody in that way, they're not going to stay. Like, that tech's not going to stay. There's millions of jobs out there, it feels like. And if you're not upfront about who you are, it doesn't matter. Like all the stuff we're talking about doesn't matter. You have to be a good place to work, and then you have to be accurately reflecting who you are and why you're a good place to work.
Absolutely. And I think to take that, a step further, don't be a shitty shop, yes, but like even the great shops, a lot of them that I find in talking to, they don't realize what makes them great.
Yes.
Like, shops need to sit down and take the time to talk about what they're doing and realize, okay, that's pretty cool. We need to make sure we're promoting that we do that. It's funny because I interview a lot of our clients and I talk to them about what they do internally and stuff. And sometimes I'll be talking about something and they don't even realize like that's a
That's pretty
cool
cool.
thing. I'm like, wait, you work with students? How? Can you tell me a bit more about that? Like, wait, you need to put that on your Top Shop page. Like, oh yeah, like, so sometimes it just takes like having that conversation and talking about what you do and realizing, wow, yeah, that is really cool. We should be telling techs that because that makes them look like an attractive shop. Like realizing the unique things you do and getting that message out there is just as important.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, in my conversations with shops, they do such a poor job at understanding what they're great at, and that then puts them in the bucket of saying the same thing that everybody else is saying, and it really makes it hard to differentiate yourself if you're just saying that. We talk about it in job descriptions. It's really hard to go out into a job description, put everything that's great about you. You can only use a paragraph or two, but teaching these shops to be able to understand and open their minds to why they're great and why they're different than every other shop out there. Sometimes that's really tough. Sometimes some shops open up right away and like, oh yeah, we do that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a prime example. Like I hate talking about myself. I'm not one to brag. Like sometimes maybe it just takes talking to someone outside of the shop and just having a conversation with them because, they're outside of it. They're a little bit more objective. So then as you're talking about the things you do in your shop, they can point it out and be like, hey, that's cool. That's something that you need to talk about. Maybe it just takes that outside perspective too.
Yeah, you think about it, exit interviews would be a great opportunity for that.
Yeah.
If you're doing an exit interview, somebody's leaving your company, ask the question about what they liked about the company and try to pick out some things in there that might be different than other shops. I think when you open your mind to the opportunities there are to really see what is different about you, something as easy as an exit interview, you can get a lot of information out of.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
All right. What other tips do we have?
I think another one, which we've kind of already touched on, but don't just rely on one channel is an important thing for marketing. In marketing, we don't just do email marketing. We don't just do social media marketing. We don't just do ads. We do it all. And the same thing is true for recruiting. They, of course, put out the ads, get those easy wins, the low-hanging fruit of the people who are actively looking for jobs. But you need to be doing more to attract the passive job seekers. And that includes being everywhere. You should be looking at your own website. Of course, most of it is tailored to consumers, but there's a section of that website you can dedicate to attracting technicians as well. Social media, same thing. Like a lot of your messages is going to be for the consumers, but texts are on social media. Why wouldn't you take the opportunity to mix in some messages there that are going to attract them to your shop as well? Another one, I mean, we can't forget about word of mouth and referrals. It's so impactful. We on the marketing side work with a lot of partners, get a lot of referrals that way, and those are always great. Well, the same is true for recruiting. Talk to your current technicians. Who do they know? Like, can they share your content on social media? Because I'm sure they're friends with or connected with people they went to school with, tech school with, their friends, other techs in the area. So then once they share that content, then their following is going to see it as well. And it has more credibility coming from an individual they know versus a brand that they aren't quite sure of yet. So I think it's kind of just not relying on one channel and using all of them in order to get your message out there. On that note, you can't always be using the same message either. If I'm as a marketer just putting out there, become a WrenchWay Top Shop. Well, okay, what? That's not going to always sell it. Maybe it might, but same for recruiting. It can't always be, hey, we're hiring. A lot of it needs to be kind of softer, so to speak. So maybe it's videos of new equipment you got in the shop that's going to attract technicians, and they'll see like, wait, that's really cool. I wish I could use that. That would make my job a lot easier. Or maybe it's your technicians talking about why they love to work there, or their favorite things about working there. Those kind of things help attract technicians, and they see, they might see one message and then they might see another message, and it all starts to add up and hit home, and then they might consider actually applying to your shop down the road. So it's important to kind of like mix up those messages as well.
I feel like that's when you've done a good job at employer branding too. I think at times that can be kind of a buzzword, if you will, but it's really important. If you're just going for the ask all the time, you're not going to pull much of anything, and people really don't know a lot about you, so they don't know what they're signing up for. And I just think I feel like when you're putting that content out there, and one, if you're creating the content, it makes it far easier to share different stuff than if you're just putting that hiring ad out, right? If you're able to create video content, and it doesn't have to be crazy content. Like if you just pull out your iPhone and video somebody and say, hey, talk to me about what you're doing today and give me an update on this project. Or, I say it all the time. I think the beauty in our industry is that we've got new content rolling in the door every day. And I think we're almost jealous of that from our standpoint, because we work in an office. But if we had that shop atmosphere, I think that's something I would take pretty darn seriously, because it'll bring you more customers. It'll bring you technicians that have heard about you. And then when you do go to ask for that, you're asking for somebody to share the message that you're looking for a technician, or you're looking for those technicians to spread the word that they're open to it. Like they're it's not just saying, hey, we're hiring every week on the same channel. It's content, and good content.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something that's extremely important for us to talk about a little bit more, which is it doesn't have to be fancy, and it shouldn't be fancy.
Yeah.
This is the perfect time to build content, because people want authentic, real content. They don't want the overly produced marketing videos, not to like rip on my profession or whatever, but like they don't want it scripted. They want the real stuff. They want the stuff shot with an iPhone that's a little rough around the edges. Like they want technicians just talking. They don't want them reading off the script. And that's so easy to create. Like you said, you just pull out an iPhone. That's all we use for the majority of our content. Like you just pull out an iPhone and that's all you need.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the new word of mouth, right? In the past, word of mouth was, hey, my buddy Jimmy's looking, and that can still be a great avenue. But the new, I guess, with the way social media has evolved, and just the online space in general, it's changed the way word of mouth is. Like it is different now.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It is interesting how it has changed things. We were just talking in the office yesterday about rugs, actually. We were talking about like the certain brand of rugs. And we're like, oh yeah, I saw, someone brought it up like, oh, I got one of these and I really like it. And I'm like, I've seen friends post about that on social media, and come to think of it, I saw an ad for that a while back. And next thing you know, a couple months down the line, I'm sitting there Googling this company and considering buying this rug. Like it's the same thing. Like you put out a couple videos here and there, and really what you're trying to do with this content is give potential applicants a view of what the culture is like inside your shop. Give them kind of that inside look of, hey, this is kind of how we operate. This is what it looks like. This is the feel for it. Like then they get an idea if they're going to fit there. And the best part of that we didn't even talk about yet is once they have that inside view, and once it gets to the point that they actually apply and come in an interview, they're more likely going to be a good fit, and it's more likely going to be someone that you're going to hire. So you're wasting less time in the hiring process by putting all that information out there ahead of time, because they already are pretty confident they're going to be a good fit by the time they apply and come in.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to segue to maybe one of the biggest errors that I see shops make, which is they'll hire somebody and then they'll stop doing everything, from a marketing recruiting standpoint. And I feel like that's a really direct correlation between recruiting and marketing, because the same goes with marketing. If you just put one piece out and then don't do anything else, the marketing's not going to be effective at all. Like if you put $100 out on Facebook or $100 out on Google and are disappointed by the results and you just don't keep going with it, you're going to have a tough time, because you like, that's how you learn too. That's how you learn different things. But it also is, we saw that on the recruiting side, where somebody hires a person, an individual, a technician, and then stops doing any of this other stuff that we're talking about, stops doing the employer branding. And that is such a issue with shops. They've got to fix this, don't they?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I think that touches on a couple important things. And one, I mean, take care of your people. So in marketing, we aren't just marketing to, people who aren't customers yet. It continues after, they buy as well. And the same should be true for recruiting. You should always be almost like convincing your technicians that they did choose the right place. It's a continual thing, because that all builds into your recruiting strategy and helps you get more people in the door as well. I totally just lost my second thought. I had another point.
Well, I'm sure it's something to do with the continuity or the consistency in going with it, right? Like, I think you're right. You're absolutely right there, where you've got to be reassuring to your team that's in that, hey, we're the best place to work, like, and not have it be a load of BS, but have it actually be, where people are thankful to work there. And, once you do that, then I think you put that marketing play into effect, where you are doing it consistently. You are doing, little things. It doesn't have to be rocket science. I think they hear us say this marketing plan and they get overwhelmed, and that it's all of this, oh my gosh, that's too much. I got too much going on my plate already. Well, you're not thinking it through enough, because even though you've got enough on your plate, there might be somebody else in the shop that doesn't. And being able to find that person who can execute consistently is so key when it comes to both the marketing to technicians and the actual recruitment of them.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that did, I do remember I was going to say, now that you said that, I was going to say, I want to touch on okay, yes, you find someone, you hire them, your team is full. Don't stop recruiting there, is what I was going to say. You got to keep it going, because you never know when a spot is going to open up that you're going to need to fill. And it's a lot easier to fill it if you've been kind of looking that whole time and it's not a fire drill. I hear you say, like, don't put out the fires, don't be reactive when it comes to recruiting. Just always be building relationships with technicians, with people out in the industry, so that if something does happen, then, you have a good amount of people to talk to that might be a good fit, that you have that built relationship with, and that's important. And that does require, like you said, a bit more strategic plan in place for recruiting. And I don't want to scare anyone off with that. On the marketing side, I always have a rough plan in place, but at any time, I'm also willing to deviate from that plan. It just having some sort of a loose plan in place keeps everyone rowing in the same direction, keeps everyone aligned. We know that hiring technicians is a priority, and we're all working towards that in some way or another. And it's okay to deviate from the plan you have for recruiting, but just know that that is a priority, is what's important, and holds you accountable for actually doing it.
Now, I'm interested there, because those of you that are listening that know Sara know that she likes to be organized. Like, everything's got to be right and good. How do you lay that plan out? I mean, is it as easy as getting a Word doc out and typing it out, and then setting reminders for yourself? Or how do you go about that, so when you've got that plan laid out, that you know to revisit it and adjust where necessary?
Definitely. You need a system in place, and that system is going to look a little different for everybody. For me, I'm a total Excel nerd, so I like to lay it out in Excel, and that's what I kind of go off of. But yeah, I lay it out month by month, okay, here's, it's February this month. What do we need to do on the marketing side? We should try to do a webinar. We should try to do X amount of blogs, It can be the same thing on the recruiting side. It can be, okay, what do we want to do to attract technicians this month? All right, this month, let's create a video doing a shout out to an employee and put it on social media. And let's ask our employees to share that video. Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe it's also, okay, let's take a look at our job description for technicians. Is everything still accurate here? How can we improve this to attract more people to our shop? It can be anything. For me, like I said, it's Excel, but I think writing it down is key. Because if it's not written down, then it's going to get lost in the mix. We're all busy. For shops, a lot of times, recruiting isn't their only job. It's going to get lost in the mix. You got to write it down. You got to look at it. You got to hold yourself accountable. You need to revisit it. However that works for you. For me, it's Excel and Trello.
Yeah, Joel, Trello, I mean, you talk about tools that can help you stay organized. There's a lot of really, they're either free or very cheap resources that you can use to kind of keep you on point. And this might not
Right.
even just be for marketing to technicians, but just in general. Trello, as far as kind of a project management type of board, works really, really well.
Right. And I mean, I don't want this to turn into a sale for our Top Shop program, but our clients use an activity tracker, which I think is super cool. And that allows you to kind of pre-populate tasks. You can assign who's accountable for it, a deadline for it. You can write notes for it. And then there's a whole dashboard that shows you, okay, we got 5 things done this quarter. That's great, but we were going for 8, whatever it is. But it's just a really easy, quick way to stay organized. And that, that works for a lot of our clients, and it doesn't have to be that way, but
No, that's a great point. And one thing I would add there is a definite difference in the effectiveness between the ones that use it and the ones that don't, right? And so the ones that are out there, they're being intentional with what they're doing. Yes, they might not do everything perfectly, but they're doing stuff. And every time they're doing something, they're learning something, and they're prioritizing it where, I think the visibility of it is so impactful, because if it's not visible and it's just kind of in the background, it's just not going to happen. And I think having that plan laid out, I love our activity tracker. I am 100% biased, but the difference between those that really actively use it and the ones that don't is pretty drastic.
Absolutely. And I think that just goes to show you need a plan, you need a system in place. And if you do that, then it's going to be successful in some way. But I think that brings up another point I want to talk about as far as tips to shops. And it's, once you're doing things, that's great, but make sure you're tracking and measuring how it works. Such a big part of marketing is just kind of, trying new things. You aren't sure how it's going to work, but then looking at what the results are, tweaking it, and then optimizing it for whatever your goal is. So, maybe you one month try to put a video out there showing off new equipment in your shop. Okay, great. Look at how that performs. Next month, try 2 techs talking about why they like working there. Okay, how did that work compared to, how many views does that one have versus this one? Did we get any applicants in this month? Did we get any last month? And the more you throw different stuff out there and compare it against each other, the more you're going to start to see how it works. I recently talked to one of our clients. It was Ron Marhofer Auto Family. Shout out to Rob. He's awesome over there. Their director of HR.
Yes, he is.
But they have one of the most viewed Top Shop pages on WrenchWay. So I asked him, like, how do you do it? Like, what's your secret? Tell me your secret sauce. And he's like, we put stuff out there and we look at the results and see, okay, let's see, this month we got this many applicants. Like, I think techs like seeing this kind of content, and they build off of it each month. And he said it's fun for his team to see. It's like trial and error. I mean, that's a lot of what marketing is too. Try it, see if it works. Nope, try something else, and always try to improve that number.
I was going to say the same thing right there. It sounds like you're talking about marketing, right? It doesn't even sound like recruiting. It sounds like
right.
You're doing the A/B testing. You're doing things to compare and contrast, like what works, what doesn't work, and then the things that work, you can probably do those better, as you move forward. And the stuff that maybe doesn't work, maybe you can tweak it so it does work. But it is kind of a constant effort to figure out, okay, what am I going to do here that's different, that's going to trigger this? And then, even with that, one thing I would ask is, with marketing, how long do you go before you know it's working or not? Because I think a lot of people might start with, we kind of touched on this earlier in the podcast, but I'm curious from a marketing standpoint, what length of time is a good time to give a marketing campaign to see if it's actually working or not?
And I don't think there's an easy answer for that. I think before you throw something out there, you have to give yourself just a rough idea of like, okay, let's take a look at this in, 2 weeks and just see how it's doing, give yourself like a time frame that you're always looking at something to see how it performs. But it's funny because, especially with video, which we've talked a lot about here, video is always out there. So it's going to gain traction over time. And it's funny because some of the videos like we've put out there after a month, it's like, oh, okay, it's getting some views, which are better than nothing. So that's still good. But then you look at it a couple months later, like, whoa, that really took off. So there's no good answer. But the good thing about that is if you're putting content out there, it's going to continue to build momentum. So it's always going to be doing well. But I think if you kind of give yourself a rough time frame, like in whatever that is, decide what it is. Maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe it's a month. Be like, okay, let's just revisit this in 2 weeks, a month, and just see how it's performing. Write that number down. The next video, photo, post, whatever it is. Okay, let's look at after a month. Let's compare the numbers. As long as you're comparing with the same amount of time, you'll get an idea of performance, and then maybe something will take off. If you're lucky, it'll go viral. That's the goal, right? Like, let's go viral, but it's kind of a pipe dream, but we can hope.
Well, and patience is so important in this whole process, right? And this is where I think when you're continually recruiting when you don't need people, it buys you patience, because you don't need to make that first move on somebody, and you can continually put that content out, and you're not worried about, you're not staying up at night thinking about, oh my gosh, I've got all of these cars to get fixed in the morning and I don't have anybody to do the work. That's where I can't emphasize this enough. This is where shops go wrong so often, is they get discouraged, they stop doing something, and it will negatively impact them for the future. And then when they do get full, they stop, and they're, kind of get fat and happy. And then all of a sudden Jimmy gets, in a car accident and can't work for the next 6 months. Then you're stuck back being awake at night. And it's just kind of a vicious circle I see in our entire industry. And it's really frustrating. So I think, I'm assuming on the marketing side, patience is pretty key as well. Like you can't just, throw a blog post out and hope that everybody sees it and you're going to have tons of business coming in the door. It takes consistent effort and really that branding.
Exactly. And I think shops are doing themselves a favor by taking that pressure off of themselves to only be recruiting when they need someone. If you're always doing it, it takes some of that weight off your shoulders, because when does come time that you do need someone, it's going to be less stressful because you've been recruiting the whole time. You've been putting content out there the whole time. You've been attracting people. You've been building relationships. So then when it comes time that you need someone, it's going to be easier than it would have been if you didn't do anything that whole time. And the same is true for marketing as well.
And I think a big piece to making this run efficiently and consistently is accountability. And I'm curious, from your perspective, how important is accountability to this entire puzzle?
It's everything. Like you said, we've talked about, like, you need that point person to kind of own the process. We call it a champion. We always look for a champion with the shops that we work with, someone who's going to own that process, hold their team accountable for always making recruiting a priority in the shop. Because without that person, without that accountability for the entire team, it's going to fall apart, because we're all busy. We all have a ton of different priorities. But if you have that key person who's kind of keeping people focused on it, that's what's really going to make it successful.
I agree. It's so important in any aspect of business, but when it comes to this, the execution, making sure that you're measuring what you're doing, and the accountability piece is just, if that doesn't happen, nothing's going to happen, and you're going to end up frustrated over and over and over again. And yeah. I challenge each shop that's listening to this to, whether you're a Top Shops customer or not, or WrenchWay customer or not, that you have that in place. And maybe you're lucky enough to have a marketing team where you can hold somebody accountable to getting views to your Top Shops page, or to just create content. But you also have to hold that person accountable, because oftentimes what I see is that they'll say, all right, we've got an intern or somebody that can do that. And then they don't think about it again for, the accountability person doesn't think about it again for another 2 months. And then that person, the champion, if you will, really looks back and was like, well, we never talked about it. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing, or, it just kind of lets your mind be spaghetti. And if you can really revisit it consistently, it doesn't take an hour-long conversation. It's 5 minutes of, hey, how are we standing with this? It helps drive activity, which is, at the end of the day, that's everything. If you don't have the accountability, the activity is not going to get done. And we've seen that
Yes.
proven over and over and over again.
Exactly. And we like to compare it to New Year's resolutions, if it helps, like putting in place. My New Year's resolution was just to be healthier this year. Okay, well, it's one thing to say that. What am I doing to hold myself accountable and to stay focused with that? well, I'm tracking what I'm eating in an app. I'm exercising X number of times a week. I'm, drinking less. I did dry January, but I'm putting differences. Glad that's over. But now it's, less
February
drinking
now.
in February. But you know what I mean? You put things in place and you just hold yourself accountable. Like mobile apps help me a lot. Or, like I said, writing it down somewhere, using some sort of system to make your goals happen, to, keep your priorities, because life happens and I get that, but
Well, and that's, going back to the very first part of our conversation, that was one of the pieces that was so impactful for me when you joined our team, was some of the accountability to me, right? Where, hey, Jay, we got to get this done. We got to get this done. And where my mind is kind of all over the place and I'm scatterbrained, you're on point and organized with everything. And that really keeps the ship moving forward, right? And I think, even in this scenario, for me, having that other person looking at it, and whether it's content or, all the stuff we do a lot together. And there's some stuff that if you just don't do it consistently, it's not going to hit. We practice the same stuff that we're preaching here. And I think if people were to take that back, one, it doesn't have to be as complicated as they're making it. Like, just simplify it, make sure it's executable, have people that will hold you accountable. So many of you have so many talented people in your shops that there's somebody in there that can keep you accountable and at least keep you looking at it as far as your progress and everything like that. So I think, that's the importance of good team members too, right? Is being able to have people that aren't afraid to call you out if you're not doing your stuff. And for that accountability person, I think that's huge too. Just having somebody that's going to maybe call you out on your BS.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Your team all has their strengths. When you look at our team, like, I'm the hyper organized one. I like to keep people on track. I like to keep things moving. I'm very, type A. You're an ideas guy. You got a lot of ideas going on here. You're like, yes, I want to do that. I want to do this. I want to do this. And so I think us working together as a team, and this podcast is the perfect example. You're kind of like, I want to do a podcast. I'm like,
we have no idea how to do
content
this.
out every week. And I'm like, that seems like a lot. I'm like, okay, we can do this, and together we steer the ship and we make it happen. Everyone on your team has different strengths, and then, you got to build off of that.
Well, and as we end the podcast here, a couple things I want to give you a shout out for. Our annual Techmission event just keeps growing every year. In the fall of every year, we do this event where we have roundtables and we're just talking about how to make the industry better. You're really the brains and the driver behind all of that. And I really appreciate everything you've done there. But it is cool to take something from like concept to actual execution. And you've done that phenomenally with the podcast, with a lot of the content that we've done out there in general. So I wish everybody in the world had a Sara on their team. It would make life much, much easier for everybody. But we genuinely appreciate everything you do for us here at WrenchWay.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And we have a great team in general on WrenchWay that it makes what I do easier and more fun too, honestly.
Yeah. And hopefully you're having to put less around me to keep me on track, but I don't think that's the case. I think I'll always need the kind of those guardrails to make sure that I'm somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, a little bit, but you got better.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. If there is somebody that wants to reach out to you, maybe talk about their marketing strategy for their business as it relates to recruiting technicians, how do they get in touch with you?
Yes, please reach out to me. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. My name is Sara Kerwin, Sara without an H, Kerwin.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
I know, important to differentiate that with us 80s babies. But also you can email me. It's sara@wrenchway.com. Please do not hesitate to reach out. I love talking to people in the industry about anything and everything.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast. It certainly will not be your last podcast. I'll make sure of that. But you did great, and we appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Jay.